Good afternoon. Good morning. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. Welcome, good thinkers, to Good Thinking Live. This is the show where we spend about 30 minutes each week, most Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, to devote a little bit of time to thinking about our thinking, to improve how we think, to set aside all the time that we are told what to think, to focus on our metacognition, thinking about our thinking. So if you are new to the show, you need to know that we always share who we are and where we're from. Where are my rubber chickens? And we have rubber chickens for participation, which you think, why rubber chickens? Well, I say, why not rubber chickens? And today's show is another kind of lens on thinking about our decisions, because decisions are what drive our lives forward. So it would be quite helpful to learn how to make better ones. And so what we do is we dig into the science and we kind of see how can we learn and actually apply some of these things to our lives. Let me welcome some people onto the show. Abdurrachid, welcome. Welcome Barkley from DC and Michael from Toronto. My good decision was to join this group. Woohoo! Okay, we've got Tejas from India, or Tejas, and we have got Pam from Crowley, Texas, and Julie from Ottawa. So we've got lots of good thinkers coming on the show. Welcome. We've got Larita from London. And the thing that's cool about this is I love the fact that we have this group, this community of good thinkers from all over the world. Malik from Mumbai, all of these people that bring perspective. Jeannie from Lake Oswego, Oregon. Woohoo, Jeannie, welcome. Anyway, welcome everyone to the show. Let's get started. And if you saw the preparation for the thinking about our thinking, think back over the last year. And so when you make it, what's today, the 21st of March, think back to the 21st of March, 2022. Now, if we make 35,000 decisions a day, a lot of them are just like, whatever, maybe coffee or tea or hit snooze or not. Those are decisions. They're not super strategic, although they could affect our lives, but they're not super strategic decisions. But think back and pick a decision and think, what is the best decision you have made in the last 12 months? So think about that for a minute. I'm going to say, Arvind from India. And we have Fahad. Welcome. So welcoming new good thinkers onto the show. Think back to the best decision you made. Okay. Now, we're not going to have a lot of time because sometimes, it takes a while to think about that. Think about the worst decision you made. The worst decision you made. And here's the question. As you're thinking about this, how do you know it's the best decision? How do you know it's the worst decision? Not like, how do you know, but how are you evaluating it? In your mind, what are you doing? What's your evaluation process? Well, I decided to take up walking last year, and I started walking a mile, and then 2 miles, and 3 miles, and the outcome is that I feel healthier and whatever, and that might be a great decision. How are you evaluating that decision? So we've got Tabitha. So, okay, excellent. I love this. This is a very specific thing. So is buying a home, are you saying that's the best decision? Let's assume it's the best decision. How are you evaluating that decision? How are you evaluating that decision? All right. How do you know how to evaluate the quality of the decision? All right. And so there's really these 3 ways that we rank and evaluate the quality of our decisions. And the literature is pretty clear that you could probably lump all of the ways we evaluate decisions into one of these 3 ways. All right. The first thing is outcome. We evaluate the outcome from our decision. Now, the thing about outcome is some outcomes are very apparent within a finite amount of time, and some outcomes, maybe time is the thumb on the scale. So like if I evaluate the quality of a decision I made yesterday, I might think this is a great outcome, therefore it's a good decision, but I don't see the outcome and the effect of that outcome. So outcome is a moment in time. How many of you think that outcome is the best way to evaluate the quality of your decision. And while you're saying that, while you're looking at that, I'm going to bring some more. Okay, so we have Shaylin says, how the consequences make me feel about myself and my life. Okay, the consequences. So how the outcomes, the consequences. Tabitha says it's the best decision she made to buy a home. Okay, excellent. Malik says, think from the perspective of the people impacted by our decision, which would include yourself. So I'm going to, let's see, we've got Saeed from Pakistan. We have got Abdurrasha says, you think about the trade-off you made while making the decision and the opportunity cost that opportunity costs, trade-offs, opportunity costs, sunk costs. All right. So Tabitha thinks, I'm going to give I need to give some participation chickens because we're actually getting a lot of great participation, but I'm going to give the first participation to the people who are thinking about how they evaluate their decisions and the people who shared where they're from, who they are, and the people that shared their decisions. Basically all the people who shared. Yay. All right. So Tabitha thinks that outcome is the best way to evaluate the quality of your decisions. I'm going to give you some other tools because the problem with looking at outcome as the best way is sometimes people look at outcome as the only way. And here's the deal. If you look at life and our decision making, and you try to say, what's a good metaphor for life? A lot of people think life is like chess. How many of you think life is like chess? And you see someone making bad decisions and you say, man, they're playing checkers while I'm playing chess. You hear that a lot, You heard that a lot in political people. Oh, you're playing checkers while I'm playing chess. But with chess, you see on the board all of what you're dealing with. You see on the board all of what you're dealing with. But life, and this is kind of an interesting perspective that came about from Annie Duke, who wrote Thinking in Bets, and she was a world-class poker champion. And I really like her thinking because, and I really like the book, because she really points out something that requires more probabilistic thinking because life is more like poker. You don't see all of the possibilities. So you should really be looking probabilistically. And probabilistic thinking is definitely on the dockets for another Good Thinking episode. But let's scrape down some other things that you could, if you start thinking about life as like poker and not like chess, it gives you a hint at some other tools that you can use to evaluate the quality of your decisions. Now, Fahad says, I like English language, speaking to everyone. Perfect. Abdurrachid says, also the matter of evolution, you can't compare the expected outcome of the real outcome connected to the decision. Yeah, there's a lot. Essentially, that's a hint. And I think what you're saying is right, because there's a lot of chance and a lot, you could call it luck, good or bad. You could call it chance. But there's a problem with evaluating your decisions based on outcome. And I'm going to give you an example. A number of years ago, I was at a party, and unbeknownst to me, two of my friends had too much to drink. And both of them, who lived very close, made the decision that they probably hadn't had too much to drink, and they both got in the car and drove home. And one of my friends drove home and was totally fine. And my other friend drove home and crashed into a mailbox and injured themselves and was arrested for drunk driving. Now, I would say both of them lived about the same amount, same distance, whatever. So if they were to evaluate the quality of their decision based on the outcome, which my friend who drove home with no incident did, and he later said, I'm a better driver when I'm drunk than this other friend. You kind of start to see the problem of evaluating decisions solely on outcome. What about intentions? Should intentions matter in your decision evaluation process? Yes or no? And there's a lot about saying it doesn't matter what you intended. It only matters what happened. Is that true? And we'll talk about this in a little bit with some studies. So the most common way we evaluate the quality of our decisions is, no question, intention or outcome. And there's a right answer to this. So take a stab. Intention or outcome? Which is the most common way we evaluate the quality of our decisions? Abdurrachid says there's a little of both sometimes. It's poker, where we take risks, and other times it's chess, where we build our decision on strategy. I'm going to argue that it's poker. Okay? And the reason I'm going to argue that it's poker is we never see all the options. And with poker, there's tons of strategy. So if you really get your mind into thinking, you can use the strategic lessons from chess for sure, but you have to look at life more like poker if you are going to become a probabilistic thinker. If you're going to consider the element of randomness and chance that is part of every single decision we make. All right, let's get into it. Adam says, not making light, but whiskey bottle, brand new car, oak tree, you're in my way. That's hilarious. Intentions matter. Yes, intentions do matter. And there's a third thing that probably matters even more to good decision making and good decision practice. Michael says outcome. Yeah, outcome is number one. Absolutely. Intentions matter. Amanda says intentions matter. And Michael says outcome is the most common way we evaluate our decisions. Now, let me say this, and I want to go on the record. Outcomes matter. Intentions matter. These are all ingredients that we use to evaluate decisions. And when people say intentions matter or they don't matter, I don't mean the politics of it or the conversations or I'm not talking about in that environment. I'm talking about kind of in the scientific evaluation of your decisions. All right. So Larita says intentions matter. Adam says lyrics from Leonard Skinner. Of course, my mind wasn't thinking about, I'm so good with lyrics, but lyrics of that genre, but I didn't. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you for pointing that out, but still interesting. All right. So intentions matter and outcomes matter, and they are ingredients in the evaluation. So if we think that our best decisions are the ones that are followed by good outcomes, and our worst decisions are the ones followed by bad outcomes, what's the problem with this? What's the problem with this? If I evaluate, and I'm not talking just about the obvious drunk driving example, I'm talking about examples for all kinds of decisions that we make. But if we evaluate our decisions based on, hey, that had a good outcome, I must have made a good decision. That had a bad outcome, I must have made a bad decision. Or they had a bad outcome, they must have made a bad decision. Or they had a good outcome. They're rich. Their company went public. They're successful. They must make better decisions. What's the problem with that? Can't we learn from the people who have had great successes what to do? Can't we learn from people who have had failures? Although, unless it's catastrophic, most people don't write books about people who've had failures. But shouldn't we learn from our failures? Yeah. Yes. Should we learn from our failures just what not to do? And should we learn from our successes just what to do? What is the problem with learning from our successes what to do, learning from other people's successes what to do, and learning from our failures what to do, or learning from other people's failures what to do? What's the problem with that? Well, I think Shaylin said it just right here. We can be lucky without being a good decision maker. So can other people. Okay? So Abdurrachid says we can add another element, which is circumstances. And circumstances can be lumped into circumstances can be lumped into chance, randomness, situations, all of it. Circumstances that you can see and ignore should be evaluated. Circumstances that you ignore because you can't see them should be acknowledged, because there are always in life an element of that. Okay, so one problem is that our outcomes are only part of the equation. It's okay to use good and bad outcomes, to challenge yourself to improve your decision process, but relying strictly on outcomes as a measure of the quality of your decision making, or even the quality of your decisions, you're falling trap to a very common bias called outcome bias. And the thing I like about Annie Duke is she talks about this in poker, where poker players say, hey, listen, I won that hand. And probabilistically, she can look probabilistically and say, you defied the odds. That was not your best hand. Well, it worked for me. Yeah. But in a million times you do that, it's not going to work 20% of the time. It's going to work 80% of the time. So which one should you do? She calls this resulting. So whether you call it outcome bias or you call it resulting, it is very tempting to evaluate evaluate decisions primarily based on outcome. All right. Let's see what we've got here. We've got so Loretta says, where does impact and context? Excellent. Impact is outcome. Impact is outcome for sure. Context is definitely part of the consideration for the decision making. And Shaylin says, plus we ignore what was good about the failures and what was bad about the successes. Rubber chickens. Yes. If you only scavenge through successes to look for what to do, you are missing half the story, because well in there are plenty of things with a little counterfactual thinking where you can find lessons of what not to do buried in success. And you can find lessons of what to do buried in the rubble of failures. And we're going to get into that in the last half. Okay, so the key to good decision is staying calm, soothe noise and biases. Staying calm is absolutely, particularly for strategic decisions, can be a very good technique. All right, so let me make the case. In his book, Fooled by Randomness, The Hidden Role of Chance in Life and Markets, Nassim Taleb explains the idea of alternative histories. I think it's very similar to counterfactual thinking. Counterfactual thinking is you look at the outcome and then you look back on the decision process and you say, who said context? So that you say, okay, what if the context was different? What if, to the Leonard Skinner lyric, what if that tree hadn't, or the mailbox in this case, the mailbox hadn't been there? What if the mailbox hadn't been there? And then you look at what if someone had intervened with person A at that bar and said, hey, let me take your keys. What could have happened? You look at the decision, you look at all the elements of the decision, and you change one thing in it. And that one thing, if it turns out to be a better outcome, it's an upward counterfactual, or it turns out it could have been a worse outcome, it could be a downward counterfactual. All right. So counterfactuals is kind of like Nassim Taleb's alternative histories. He argues that we should judge decisions by considering the costs of the alternatives. That if history is played out in another way, he calls these substitute courses of events, or alternative histories. Not the same, by the way, as alternative facts. Remember that whole alternative facts that we were dealing with a few years back? Yeah, no, these are alternative histories, or looking at changing something, counterfactuals. Taleb illustrates this strange concept with this scenario. So he says, imagine you're offered $10 million to play Russian roulette. That's that game where you put 6 bullets in a revolver and you spin the chamber and you put it to your head and you click. All right. So imagine you did that, or someone else did that, hopefully not you, and you pulled the trigger and you got $10 million. What is your chance of getting $10 million? Anyone? Anyone want to take a stab? What is your chance of spinning that 6 bullets of getting $10 million? All right. So when you guys think about that, you'll put that in the chat. Arva, when we evaluate decisions based only on the outcome, we ignore factors that go beyond outcome. Absolutely. For example, if someone has quit a job, in the new fiscal year and got another good job, then others feel that he or she has quit the job at the right time. But there could be many other factors, personal skills, strategy of applying for jobs and negotiations. Absolutely. And Fahad said, I enjoy listening to you. Thank you, Fahad. I enjoy your comments. So this is great. All right. So you have what? You have a 5 in 6 chance of getting $10 million. So you do that, or someone does that and they get $10 million, and then they go on speaking circuits and they talk about what they've done with the $10 million. And does this mean that it was a good decision? Well, the problem with that, getting the $10 million because you pulled the trigger and it didn't, that particular time, it didn't have the bullet in it, thankfully. The problem is that only one of the histories is observed. In reality, the history of you having that $10 million with lots of benefits and all sorts of accolades, you only see that one history. Now, that's an obvious example, but in all the decisions we make, there are alternative histories. And when we have wild success, it's hard to see that there are upward counterfactuals. In other words, there are potentially things that we could have done to even have had greater success. And you think, why be greedy? Because that is the way you begin to create a process of evaluating your decisions in a wiser, more reliable way than relying on outcome or just intention, but primarily outcome alone. All right. So Taleb explains that although the remaining 5 histories, so there's no bullet, no bullet, bullet, so no bullet, bullet, no bullet, no bullet, no bullet, no bullet, are not observable, we should consider them. So do you do this? Do you consider the possible alternatives to your decision that absolutely could have happened, even without any change to any aspect of the decision that you could foresee because of randomness or chance or luck? And do you only do this when you have a bad outcome? Do you use this whole, this trope of, failure is great. You can learn from your failures. But successes, can you learn what not to do from your successes as well? And if you can, then you are using outcome in the best possible way. Some decisions, same decision, worse outcome, some same decision, better outcome. So here is how some things that you can, here is what you can use and some of the things that you can do in the last few minutes today. If you're going to use outcomes to evaluate the quality of your decision, scavenge for upward counterfactuals and downward counterfactuals, what could have been better, alternative histories, both in your failures and in your successes and in other people's failures and successes. Consider intention. And we're going to get into one, maybe we'll try to get into one study. Let me think about it. In a series of studies, researchers asked groups of participants to evaluate situations where A, someone who wanted to be fair obtained an unfavorable outcome. So that would be the case, good intention, bad outcome. Okay. B, someone with selfish intentions obtained a favorable outcome. So bad intentions, good outcome. Right? So we've got intentions and outcome kind of butting heads. Or C, the subjects evaluated the decision of both individuals jointly. So some people only saw good intentions, bad outcome. Some people only saw bad intentions, good outcome. And some people saw them jointly. And the researchers expected that when evaluators had the chance to compare the well-intended from the ill-intended head to head, that evaluators would give more weight to individual intention rather than their outcomes versus the ones who only focused on one of the individuals. So if you could see, oh, well, these guys were kind of had bad intentions and they had a good outcome, and these guys had good intentions. But what happened? What happened? Well, contrary to this prediction, the evaluators weighed the individual outcomes, so they didn't see them butted against each other, and their intentions less when evaluating them jointly versus when evaluating them separately, which is kind of strange. Meaning, if I saw both cases, I would judge the people with the bad intention and the good outcome as having a better decision process. But if I looked at them individually, that same effect didn't happen, which is kind of counter to what I would be thinking. All right, let's get some comments in here. Tabitha says, good and bad outcomes. Absolutely, you should be evaluating both good and bad outcomes. And, okay, since we cannot change reality, let us change the eyes which see reality. Ooh, that's a great quote. Siam Mantak. Welcome. Okay, good quote. All right, so what about this one? We're going to go, I want to get this other study because this is a practical one. In a study, participants evaluated a physician who would choose between two equally effective drugs to treat a patient. So participants also learned that although the drugs were equally effective in clinical tests, one was cheaper for the patient and would generate more revenue for the physician. All right. So, scratch that. One was cheaper for the patient and one would generate more revenue for the physician. All right. So they were equally effective. One was cheaper for the patient and one would generate more revenue for the physician. So participants had these separate evaluation conditions. So we'll see what you guys think. Ready? A doctor prescribed a cheaper drug to save the patient's money, but despite these good intentions, the patient suffered from adverse effects and spent the night in the hospital. So that was condition A. This is condition A. So they used the effective drug and tried to save the patient money, but it had a bad outcome. All right. B, the doctor prescribed the more expensive drug to generate more revenue for themselves and for the clinic. And although the physician had selfish intentions, the patient made a full recovery without side effects or hospitalization. How would you rate these doctors? Tick, 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 tick. How would you rate these doctors? Okay, let's think about that. Bad outcome. Tried to save you money. Equally effective. Good outcome. Tried to get myself some money. How would you rate these doctors? Well, in this study, the participants evaluated both physicians. And when they evaluated both physicians, they rated the selfish physician more positively or less positively. Who wants to take a stab? Double rubber chickens for anyone who takes a guess, whether you get it right or wrong. When they evaluated the selfish physician, so bad intentions, good outcome, good intentions, bad outcome, when the people rated these physicians, who did they rate more positively? Okay. So Adam says second doctor got lucky. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, they were both equally effective drugs. So Tabitha says they rated A as good. And Shailene says if the drugs were equally effective, then the decision of the doctor is unrelated to the outcome of the patient. Okay, someone's getting major. Okay, we got some good chickens for weighing in. So another LinkedIn Learning user says equal. The patient with adverse effects was just unlucky, more positive. All right, so let's get to it. When subjects rated these physicians side by side, they rated the physician with bad intentions and a good outcome more positively, showing, at least leaning to, the possibility or probability of outcome bias. All right. So this is a dangerous trap. How do we avoid it? Let's get the last minute. We'll get into it. Number one, for strategic decisions, not like coffee or tea, but any kind of decision that has an effect on your future, an important effect, or even a kind of important effect, have a decision process that you can evaluate separate from intentions and separate from outcome. And also know that looking at outcome too heavily can lead you astray, even to ignore intention. Well, maybe you should ignore intention. It depends on what happens. It all comes down to having a reliable decision process. And if you want a good decision process, and I'm going to kind of tout it. We have just launched our new LinkedIn Learning course, reducing or removing noise and bias from strategic decision making, that gives you on LinkedIn Learning, if you have a subscription, it gives you a decision process that you can borrow from to create your own decision process. Make judgments about your decision process before outcomes are known. Before outcomes are known. How do you do that? Make judgments about other people's decision-making process before the outcomes of their decision are known. And you can only do this if you understand this trap of outcome bias and you replace or add to your evaluation toolbox a decision process. Celebrate good outcomes. For sure, life's too short. Celebrate good outcomes, but consider alternative histories, all other outcomes that could have happened without any change to your decision, because that helps you begin to become a probabilistic thinker, understanding and recognizing the element of randomness, of chance. Again, thinking of life more like poker, less like chess. Not to say that strategy isn't a huge part of poker, because it is, but it's also based on probabilistic thinking. Use outcomes to reevaluate your decision process. Your decision process should be in a constant state of improvement, but when you do use outcomes, scavenge your successes and failures for both good and bad elements of a decision process. Don't ignore intention, but don't give it main course status. Intention is an ingredient. Consider intention before outcomes are known. Before highlighted emotions of a bad outcome can deceive you into ignoring or misinterpreting intention. All right, let's see what we've got. Yeah, Tabitha, I was kind of shocked too about that. Wow. But when you think about it, it's so hard to overcome this outcome bias if you don't even know it's there. So for us, we all know it's there. We've taken the first step. All right. The second one. Yes. You were right. Oh, good. Go take it. I think you're going to love it. I'm very happy with this course, but it's really not a course for, it's not an easy course. It's not hard, but it's a course for people who really want to improve their decision process. What problem can I see me in every places that I can do good? What problem can I see for every places? Okay. So some good questions here. All right. Wrapping up, because we're 2 minutes over, it's easy to celebrate or lament a particular decision or action based on how it turns out. But it's so important to remember that the process that led to the decision is what should be evaluated, including the decision maker's initial intentions. You need to observe those in order to become a good evaluator of your decision process. What we see is what's visible and available. And often this is nothing more than randomness, than luck. So if you don't consider this element of randomness as you move toward becoming a more probabilistic thinker, and be on the lookout for more courses with that. And yet we love a story. We love a story so much that we want to make it a story. We don't want to look at all the things that just happen because of luck. Then we put that as a block that stands between us and our good decision-making process. A good outcome means we made the right decisions? No. There's a better way to evaluate our decisions. And now you have it. Have a great week. See you next week. Thanks for participating. Excellent comments here on LinkedIn Live and on YouTube Live at Becky Saltzman. You can hit that bell notification, subscribe, because sometimes we get little glitches from the StreamYard where we're streaming to these two places. Anyway, thank you for being here. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye.